and welcoming in, I believe, for his first time with us on the program from the Weekly Standard. He's the big shot over there. Bill Kristol is in Chicago for a fundraiser for U.S. Senator Mark Kirk. Talk a bit about that, and also national security, of course, too, the presidential race. Bill Kristol, good morning. Thanks.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Want to start with a big picture, and we'll sort of narrow down as we get going into this Illinois U.S. Senate race, which is so big in terms of, well, control of the Senate and big for national security concerns, too. The President Obama with a new interview this morning up at NPR, actually, in which he echoes, I'm sure you saw this last week, Bill, that New York Times story where there was a line edited out about how he wasn't watching enough cable TV to know how the American people were reacting to the attack in San Bernardino. This morning in the NPR interview, he apparently blames the media for blowing things out of proportion. He said, look, the media is pursuing ratings. This is a legitimate news story. I think it's up to the media to make a determination about how they want to cover things. He's saying they're showing too much. They're covering this story too much. Is that even possible?
It's not possible. I don't even think it's true in this case, incidentally. I'm sitting here looking at the papers here in Chicago. There's nothing about San Bernardino. It was a big story for a few days, and actually I would say the implications of it have probably receded rather quickly. People aren't having enough of a debate about our immigration and visa policies, and we have a front page, a cover story of the Weekly Standard on the sort of cultural contradictions of Islam in America, a very thoughtful piece by Peter Scarry on sort of the challenges of Muslim American integration. I think people are scared to write about that kind of thing because it's politically incorrect. So you get some demagogues like Trump, but actually it's really ironic that Obama's blaming the media. The guy spends all his time thinking about how to use the media, as many politicians do. I like the blame of cable news especially.
Right.
I'm on cable a lot, but a few million people watch cable. I mean, there are hundreds of millions of people in the United States. It's not really plausible that cable news is driving the whole country crazy.
And there's an argument made. I think Hillary Clinton made this argument, and it's not off the beaten path. It's that Americans are fearful. They're afraid, and that's why Donald Trump's arguments are getting some traction. And I know multiple people have written this, so I don't know who to credit. But the argument goes, look, people aren't necessarily afraid of ISIS, right? I think people understand that if we really put our mind to it and our military might to it, we probably could wipe them out in short order. People are afraid, and people are a little bit skittish because they don't believe the president and this administration is taking the threat seriously, A, and B, they don't have a strategy. They don't have a strategy in this fight.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of condescending to say the American people are afraid. They're not cowering down. Last I looked, people are going to work, flying places, taking trains, going to community centers, baseball. I'm out of season here. Football games, so forth, basketball games here in Chicago. I mean, it's a little ridiculous. I think the public is angry and worried that we are doing badly in the world. Well, that's just a fact, right? I mean, ISIS dominates thousands of square miles in the Middle East and is exporting terror and slaughtering people within those. The area controls. Iran got a very good nuclear arms deal. Those are just facts. I mean, people are right to be concerned about that. They've lost confidence in the political class, not just in Obama. I think that's really the key to Trump's success. They've lost confidence in the Republican Congress, if they ever had it. They've lost confidence in both parties. They've lost confidence in political elites, but also financial elites and media elites. And that's not a healthy thing for the country, but I don't really blame the public. I think the elites have failed an awful lot. So, President Obama can point his finger at cable news or talk about the public being fearful, but I think it's really the blame goes more to the political elites than to the public.
Bill Kristol is with us here. It's Riley and Scott on WROK, Weekly Standard, of course. He's also in town for an event for U.S. Senator Mark Kirk. We'll talk more about that in just a moment or two. When you look at the way the administration has reacted to San Bernardino in a larger scope, the threat of ISIS, and we talk about refugees, we talk about the way some of the visas are being taken care of. Have they done nearly enough to address the rightful concerns of Americans? What simple steps might be able to be taken to begin to address the problem?
I don't think they've done very much. They certainly seem very confident they can vet the Syrian refugees, which I think is a little bit dubious, to say the least. Mm-hmm. And obviously Donald Trump is wrong when he says we should cut off all Muslims coming to the U.S. On the other hand, is it ridiculous to say that we need to be much more careful about certain countries, and even countries that have visa waiver programs. No one wants people from France to have a real tough time coming to the U.S. There's a huge amount of business and tourism both ways. On the other hand, as we learned from the Paris bombing, there's some terrorists in France, unfortunately, and it's occurred to them that Paris isn't the only city they could attack. They could also attack New York or Chicago. So some additional scrutiny, maybe a little bit of profiling, even though one's not supposed to do that these days, I guess, wouldn't be so foolish, I think, in terms of people coming into the U.S.
Bill Kristol with us. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. As I mentioned, you're in Chicago right now for a Mark Kirk event. I'm sure you get asked to do a number of these things throughout the campaign cycle, throughout election season. Why say yes to U.S. Senator Mark Kirk? Why are you there on his behalf?
Yeah, no, I do ask to get to a fair number, and I don't really do that many. I really respect Mark Kirk. I'm actually more conservative than he is, and we've disagreed on some issues, but he is really a man of principle and a kind of fairly rare U.S. senator who votes his conscience. He'll take on his own party quite often, what he feels is the right thing. And on issues I care about, national security and foreign policy issues, he's been just a consistent voice of strength. He's also, I think, personally admirable, fighting back to really a virtually full recovery from his stroke. But really, on national security, there aren't that many people in the U.S. Senate, unfortunately, who know as much as they should, who take it as seriously as they should, who give it the priority, they should. It's easier for a senator to obviously do things for his local, for the state and the localities, and that's fine. But Kirk is really a national leader, so he asked me to come out here and do a little event for him, and I'm happy to do it. And it's always nice to come visit Chicago, see how the city's doing. Rahm Emanuel doing a great job there. How come all the coverage of him? Shouldn't President Obama get asked about him sometimes, incidentally? I mean, he was
you would think
Obama's chief of staff last I looked before coming out here. This is a city I kind of vaguely remember that President Obama is from. You'd think that, can you imagine if the city that Bush was from had Bush's former chief of staff as mayor, and there were huge allegations of misconduct and cover-up and so forth? Don't you think that would be kind of a big national issue?
It's not even that, Bill, but it's that the president has seen fit to weigh in on any number of national events that either A, he didn't have facts on, or B, just got in way too early, whether it be the gate situation, right, whether it be what happened in Ferguson, or elsewhere. This is one situation where he is literally connected via a former staffer in Rahm Emanuel. It is his hometown, and yet he has not talked about the Laquan McDonald case at all.
Yeah, you're right. It's remarkable. This is the one place he would actually presumably know more and have more of a kind of right or an obligation almost to say something. And he has. Well, he's having a good time in Hawaii. He doesn't want to think much about, Chicago.
Right.
It's, and I guess that's his. He's busy chastising us for being too scared, though, by what happened.
That's right.
In Bernardino.
He's too busy watching cable news to catch up on what he might have missed. Yes. Bill Kristol with us, Weekly Standard, weeklystandard.com, but of course the print edition too. Back to Mark Kirk quickly. One issue he's been leading on from well before it was even on, I think, people's radar has been Iran, both in terms of the sanctions on Iran and in trying to fight against this horrific Iran deal. Mark Kirk's been right at the front of that fight.
He has, and he's staying in the fight, trying to put sanctions on Iran for their sponsorship of terror. And, of course, the Obama administration saying, oh, no, the deal precludes that. I mean, people don't understand. It's not just a bad deal in that it paves the way for Iran to get nuclear weapons. It takes off the sanctions, gives them tens, hundreds of billions of dollars, unfortunately, some of which they will certainly use to export terror and to support Assad. To destabilize the Middle East. The combination of people haven't really focused maybe on this as much as they could have. The combination of the Obama administration's weakness vis-a-vis ISIS on the one hand and against Iran on the other has just created such a toxic situation in the region that extremists of all sides are feel emboldened, and the people who might stand with us are really hunkering down. A few of them are fighting with Egypt or Jordan, countries that actually have real militaries. But being a friend of the U.S. is not a great thing to be in the Middle East these days, and that's a terrible situation. And Mark Kirk understands what a terrible price we unfortunately might pay for that if that just goes on.
Bill Kristol with us, just another minute or two. Bill, you mentioned earlier, look, there are some issues on which you disagree with Senator Kirk. There are issues I disagree with Senator Kirk on, and I'm sure our listeners do too, whether that be perhaps Second Amendment, perhaps pro-life issues. But on national security and foreign relations, he's right. He's right virtually all the time on those issues, I would say. Make the argument, please, as to why perhaps some of our listeners should put aside some disagreements and say, look, when it comes down to it, and it's Mark Kirk against very likely Tammy Duckworth, we must perhaps enthusiastically support Mark Kirk. Why is that so important?
Well, first of all, he really is a leader on the national security stuff, not just a kind of good vote. So that really is important. I think that's an underrepresented, aspect of. There aren't that many leaders on national security in the Senate. And look, he's a Republican, and if you're pro-life, as I am, you would like the Republicans to control Congress, but that means the predominantly pro-life party is controlling Congress. Same on guns and other issues. So even if Mark Kirk personally isn't quite where most of the Republicans are and will dissent on some votes, it makes a big difference to have Mitch McConnell as majority leader rather than Chuck Schumer. So I think if you're a strong conservative in a state like Illinois, we should have no hesitation in strongly supporting Mark Kirk.
All right, Bill Kristol, we love the Weekly Standard. It comes in our mailbox each and every week, and appreciate the work done at weeklystandard.com, too, which is always fantastic, and your effort as well. Bill, thanks for the time this morning. We very much appreciate it.
And my pleasure. Thanks for the kind words, and Merry Christmas.